Colossus is the most advanced lineup optimizer in daily fantasy sports. Lock and exclude players. Adjust player exposure to reduce risk of injury or poor performance. Customize individual projections or upload your own projections. Generate hundreds of optimal lineups in seconds. Name and save the best lineups. Create winning lineups for the top sites like DraftKings and FanDuel for free at dailyfantasycafe.com.
Hello and welcome to the Blitz podcast. We're talking about defenses here, the analysis of Week 1. I'm Big Italy 42. He is Scott Mailwig at Sports 25 to Life. We're going to start off with the top plays here, as written by Spencer here, Spencer_JL from Twitter. And top defense he's got here is the Carolina Panthers at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Obviously, we know Jacksonville, one of the worst offenses last year, as they have been for each of the last few seasons, really. It's just a team that, they don't have weapons. They went and signed Julius Thomas. Now he's out for at least a month. You got Blake Bortles. You got a rookie running back. So, this is probably one of your safer bets on all formats, really. Cash games, GPPs. You got to imagine young quarterback, lack of elite options. Can't imagine they're going to score a lot of points against this solid defense.
Yeah, I like the Panthers. I think they're a pretty solid play. I think Jacksonville's offense is going to be decently improved, though, with a rookie running back. Bortles in his second year. Their receiving core is okay. It's not an offense you're scared of at all, for sure, and that's the big appeal here. They're a little pricey, but not quite as pricey as the Seahawks most places. I think I'll have a decent amount of Seahawks, who we can talk about a little bit. I think these are far and away the top two options, though, with a couple people a tier or so below them. The Seahawks against the Rams should be a really solid play, although they are really expensive. Nick Foles turned the ball over 13 times in 9 games last year. There's no one that's really scary on that offense, especially if both their top running backs don't play and they end up starting Benny Cunningham, which is looking more and more likely by the day, basically. That could be a really bad offense, especially Week 1. So I like both of those as the top. I know Spencer likes the Dolphins also, who we can get to here if you want to start off on them.
Yeah, definitely. I'm with you on the Seahawks, too. Like you said, it's Nick Foles, and it's not a whole lot else. Benny Cunningham's had his chances to be the feature back and hasn't fared very well. So now we get the Miami Dolphins at Washington, which Kirk Cousins, obviously not RG3. RG3 nowhere near the starter. And, Kirk Cousins, stats on him, he has more more turnovers than touchdowns throughout his career. So while everyone thinks he's a significant upgrade over RG3, he still turns the ball over a ton. And that Miami Dolphins defensive line might be the best in all of football now. Adding Ndamukong Suh there, that's a team that you got to imagine they're going to be getting quite a few sacks, even if they don't force any turnovers or have any returns, anything of that nature. Got to imagine this team's going to be getting 2, 3, 4 sacks a game. So that gives you a nice high floor too.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, the Washington offense doesn't scare you at all. I think Alfred Morris is still their best player. I was a lot more scared of him when you had to worry about them running the read with RG3, honestly, and I just don't see where they're going to get a ton of big plays from. They can target Deshaun Jackson deep, but they're going to get a lot of pass rush, like you mentioned, with Sue there now. I really think it might be the best defensive line. If it's not, it's a top 3 defensive line in the league, and Washington's offensive line is a bottom 5 line based off PFF rankings last year. I don't personally think it got any better this year.
Yep.
We'll see, but this is a really high upside group. Obviously, the Redskins can put a little bit more of a fight up than Jacksonville and stuff like that at times because they do have a lot of speed on their team at the very least. But this is probably the most high upside group that we have this week.
Yeah, and like you said, you can have all the speed in the world if you want, but if you don't have time to get him the ball, it's not going to matter. And we've seen Alfred Morris, I agree with you being their best offensive player, but at the same time, seems like all of his productive outings have been with RG3, with the read option, because it's a one-dimensional offense at that point when you can't throw the ball. So it's
absolutely
it's going to be a slaughter for them if they can't get it going. Cheaper plays. Spencer highlighted here the Tampa Bay Buccaneers against Tennessee. Obviously, this is a Tennessee offense that doesn't seem to know what the hell they're doing at running back. They don't like any of the guys they have. They're still talking about maybe bringing in another guy. It's just a mess there. Obviously, Marcus Mariota coming in. And, you have a couple talented wide receivers, but, you don't have a single guy you have to worry about as the playmaker. Obviously, Mariota has the ability to, run outside the pocket, make plays with his legs, but I mean, if you just target on him, they spy the quarterback. You're not going to have a whole lot of upside with this offense right now. So you got to imagine this is going to be still one of the worst offenses in football this year.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm not super excited about the Tampa defense. I don't hate the Tennessee offense, but this combination, especially with the pricing on both sites,
Yeah.
I mean, they're 2,800 on DraftKings. That's a great value play. I really have a hard time arguing with it. I can't imagine that. I mean, Mariota's going to have a huge game in his first NFL game. I mean, he's a talented guy, but like you said, they don't have a lot around him, especially at running back, to take the pressure off of him. So there's a lot of upside here with turnovers.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up, he's got the Dallas Cowboys here at home against the New York Giants. Obviously, the Giants have some weapons. They've got Odell Beckham Jr. Victor Cruz is one of those guys. Doesn't seem like he'll be playing week one. Wasn't much of a factor at the end of last year anyway.
Yep.
Then you got Rashad Jennings, who, even when he's healthy, is inconsistent. Eli Manning, we've seen good and we've seen bad, so you're not sure what you're going to get. He has had some big games against the Cowboys throughout his career, but, I mean, he had major troubles with turnovers last year. So, Obviously having guys like Orlando Scandrick out is going to hurt that Dallas defense. But at the same time, I mean, you got to expect that if you get pressure on this quarterback, on Eli Manning, he did not fare well under pressure last year. So, double cover Odell Beckham, keep a safety over the top, do something, whatever you got to do, slow him down, and then there's not a whole lot else to worry about in that offense.
Yeah, I mean, Eli could have a nice game, though. I mean, we saw him play really well in the second half last year. I feel like this Cowboys defense is more of a GPP value play to me, where the Buccaneers are more of that cash game value play to me. Buccaneers are definitely going to be higher owned, but like you said, I mean, we've seen Eli turn in some of the absolute best games for opposing defenses in the history of fantasy football.
Yeah. And
so,
then he wins Super Bowls. You
right.
just don't know
So
what you're gonna get.
Right, exactly. So I mean, that's why at this price against the Giants, I mean, I think there's a ton of upside there on the price. They don't even have to have a great game to pay off the price. But I think this is more of a GPP value play for me, where I'll be looking at the Buccaneers more in cash games.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Next up, the GPP section that Spencer highlighted, and I'm all aboard this first one for GPPs. Green Bay Packers at the Chicago Bears. I mean, the whole situation with Alshon Jeffrey just keeps getting weirder and weirder by the day. Hasn't been available to talk to the media. You assume he's not going to play week one. Maybe he's out for a while. Not really any indication of what's going on there. I mean, really, at this point, Brandon Marshall obviously gone now. You still have Martellus Bennett, but really, as you're an opposing defense, you're looking at Matt Forte. You contain him. And without Alshon Jeffrey, I mean, you got Eddie Royal basically as your top offensive option. Outside, if you can contain Forte, I mean, there's just not a whole lot going there. And we know that Jay Cutler, I mean, without big weapons, he struggles. He struggled with weapons last year.
Right, yeah. I mean, he struggles with turnovers even with when he had Brandon Marshall, Alshon Jeffrey, Martellus Bennett all in the lineup. And Matt Forte playing some of the best running back of anyone last year. So, I mean, he's a guy that can turn the ball over a ton. His history against the Packers is terrible.
Yeah.
The one thing he has going for him is it's at home, which he's played a little bit better at home in his career with the Bears. But, I mean, especially if Alshon Jeffrey's out, I like this a lot. It's a bit safer of a play. Right now, it's another team that has a huge upside against a turnover-prone quarterback. And, I mean, they have a lot of ball hawks in the secondary. They have Peppers and Matthews up front rushing the passer, so they can create a lot of havoc. They're not going to shut teams down in a yardage standpoint, but they're going to make a lot of plays. And I agree. I think they're a fantastic GPP play.
Yeah, because we both know that Cutler is that guy that under pressure, he doesn't take the sack. He's the guy that tries to force it in. And you don't have Brandon Marshall to bail you out anymore, so that's not going to work out too well for him. Last up, we've got the Kansas City Chiefs at the Houston Texans. Obviously, the big story there being Arian Foster out. Obviously, not going to be out as long as we thought, but that doesn't matter for week one. Not going to be playing. So, Alfred Blue, going to be the volume back, but he's not a particularly talented back. He's strong, but he's not fast. He's not all that elusive. So, you're going to be expecting him to run it a ton, but it's Brian Hoyer at quarterback, who I don't think is a terrible quarterback. I think he's slightly above average. But at the same time, I mean, there's a lot of elite defenders on this Kansas City Chiefs side. So, a somewhat inexperienced quarterback and a lack of a big play at running back. I mean, there's just not a whole lot to like about the Houston offense without Arian Foster.
Yeah, right. I mean, the only good player on that roster right now is Hopkins, and I mean, you got to assume he's going to be double covered. He's been a popular play, or written up play, at least I should say, prior to week one. But I mean, I can't see a way that they don't roll the entire defense towards him with the lack of other weapons on this team.
Yeah.
And that makes me think the Chiefs are a great play also. They're they're not as good a defense in terms of like the Packers is forcing turnovers and sacks and stuff like that. But this is just a really good matchup. It's a pretty good defense, yardage allowed wise. And like you said, no Arian Foster, at least the backfield pretty empty. Not a lot of other weapons besides Hopkins for Houston. I think this is a great GPP play also.
Yeah, they were a very opportunistic defense last year. We saw them, even when they're giving up points, they were getting interceptions, scoring touchdowns, returning kicks. So definitely a lot of ways that they could produce for you this weekend. So that's going to wrap things up. Find us on Twitter at the F Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out all of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.